Hello, and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence. Oh,
and it's your old pal, the Vault Keeper.
And today we're talking about Tales from the Crypt. We're going to be watching wait, what is this episode called now?
This one is All Through the House.
All Through the House, which is a Christmas episode. And we're going to be doing some live commentary.
First of all, I just want to say this episode was the one that traumatized me for life as a child. I don't know if this is the first episode I saw, but it was like by far the one I remembered the most. As far as I remember, my understanding of what was going on in the world, and it was probably from an episode of Unsolved Mysteries or something like that, they were talking about like a guy who had escaped a local like institution and was out, and it was around it wasn't around Christmas time, it was probably in the summer, but we watched this with my mom every like Friday night, late night on Fox, so we always saw like the edited versions and everything. So I saw this thing on Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, and I like thought it was real, so I thought this guy was going to come and do this at our house after having seen this episode. So I had to sleep on my mom's floor for like months until I believed that this guy had really been locked up. Not that I thought this was real, but it just scared me so bad about it really happening.
How old were you?
I would have been in like 3rd or 4th grade, I think.
Oh, that's so scary. We were just talking about the new Black Christmas trailer, the remake or reboot, and I love holiday themed horror. I mean, just the other one that you recommended, I really liked. It was, what was it called? The one that
Christmas Evil? No,
it's the one with the babysitter. It's on Shudder.
Oh, All Through the House.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that movie.
It's so good. So I recommend that, and that's based on a Christmas time. And it's if you remember, it's the kids, the brother and sister from The Visit, but they're not brother and sister in that movie. So that's kind of cool.
I didn't know that. I love how the people who worked on this, like Richard Donner, shit, the thing went by. Like, the producers, Joel Silver, William, like, this show was put together by, like, legitimate Hollywood people at the time. And it comes, you know, it's so perfect, and I wish they would do something like this again, where it's, like, purposely campy and, like, this feel. So I'm really hoping the new Creep Show on Shudder does that.
Yes, that would be awesome. I don't know why they haven't like rebooted this, and this was directed by Robert Zemeckis. I mean, these are legit people.
There has been talk M. Night Shyamalan was attached for a while, but then I don't know what happened with the rights, and it wasn't going to be like a reboot, it was going to be like a new series, so like different Crypt Keeper and stuff. Oh girl. Like the pacing and the tone, you don't get this anymore. Luckily, I don't think my mom ever murdered anyone in our living room. I only sweat when I murder. Yeah. This plot structure is so classic.
And it feels like the old comic books.
Yeah.
I've
been rereading those lately, and it's insane to me to think of them as being from like the late 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, you know, people talk about, oh, it's like current things are controversial, or, you know, they didn't used to have, you know, horror like this, but it's always been around. It's just maybe been in different forms.
Exactly. His corpse fell over. That's a moment of levity. There were only 2 episodes to this entire series that weren't based on the original comics.
Really? That's amazing.
I don't know what they are off the top of my head. Well, one of them was the final episode, which was animated, and it was the 3 little pigs.
What a great premise. I mean, the true monsters, the true horror in this world is, you know, people who are unhinged, and for an escaped mental patient to be going around dressed as Santa on Christmas or near Christmas. I mean, what's more terrifying than that?
Very few things. And I love how the backdrop is that she's trying to cover up a murder herself. So she really is isolating herself. Like, what's she going to do? Call the cops? Who knows? Maybe. I don't know that the well would be the first place. I mean, clearly they must not drink out of it. I hear your Santa bells. Right? He just comes in a swinging. I think part of what makes these episodes so scary, to me, at the time especially, is that they're so unrelenting. Like, they just come in, they're so fast, 25 minutes an episode, including the Crypt Keeper's intro and exit. And, like, there's no build-up to this. It's just this insane man swinging an axe around. Like, everyone's screaming.
I love how they made him have these disgusting teeth and just a crazy look in his eye. It's so great.
It's absurd and wonderful, and you can see why they're, like, funny as an adult, but when you're a kid, it's like, oh my god. Like, these comics were written for kids, and that's why they were so scared of them, because, you know, it's something they're not supposed to be watching or reading at the time. And as an adult, when you actually go, like, if these people had gone and actually read what was going on, I wonder how many of the adults would have ended up liking it. Because they're really funny.
So, I just thinking, if I were her, I would say that the Santa Claus guy killed the husband or the boyfriend or whoever he is. But, you know, she's probably not thinking clearly.
Tire swing through the window. This is very Friday the 13th. I like that this, like, giallo style. Like, I'm not really holding you. I can't reach the axe even though my hand is just within. The snowiness. Yeah. It's such a Minnesota feeling winter here in this episode. And everyone's house is still decorated like that. All the boomers.
Uh-huh.
I didn't kill him. This is the series premiere, by the way.
Oh, this was.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Or it might have been shot first and aired second. Because the other one has William Sadler, who also happened to be in Demon Knight. And he likes to electrocute people. It's funny because she missed his face. There's a child. A highly cherubic.
I love that the jingle bells, it's so innocent and happy, yet in this episode, it's a sound of terror. And it's just like, it's so unexpected.
Reminds me of Krampus. I also love, like, there's something about these kinds of shows, how you can tell they're shot on sets even though they're outside, that adds this sense of theatricality that I think this show really needs to pull off their tone and everything. I love it. She should have yelled something into the phone. That is a serious door.
Oh god.
You big old Santa.
Oh, even his fingernails are black. It's so creepy.
I know, this kid's like, that's definitely the real Santa. He has like a bloody gash on his head. He, in this episode, is so different from how he ended up being later.
Yeah.
Did you know he was the same animatronic as the original Chucky? They have the same eyeballs.
That was Larry Drake. I thought it was. Awesome.
I don't know who that is. Who's Larry?
Oh, he was Dr. Giggles. Do you remember that movie?
I've never seen Dr. Giggles.
1989.
I was 4. Brad Pitt.
Gosh.
Oh my god. That's not the one.
I'm so surprised at like the level of people that they got for Tales from the Crypt, and that like cameos, or I don't know if they were even cameos back then because maybe they went on to do bigger things later. But
There's an episode with Daniel Craig.
They really need. I think they need to reboot this show. I think it's exactly what we need right now. Yeah.
And HBO could find someone who understands. Let us do it.
Yeah, well, it's fine. We'll put it out there.
They'll pick us. Okay, so this episode, the new arrival is. I've seen it on lists as the #1 best episode. I love it. I don't know that I would call it the very best episode because I think that Santa one is way up there. But it's really good, and it has some familiar faces.
I love the Danny Elfman music, the theme song. It's just perfect.
It's fantastic, and this intro is so classic. Like, this show, it's so strange to me because It felt like such a big part of the zeitgeist when it was out. But I feel like now it's not really talked about much. Hopefully people will see Creepshow on Shudder and maybe it'll make a revival.
Yeah.
Like, the genre could use a revival.
Yeah, because there's no anthology horror. I mean, there hasn't been. I mean, the American Horror Story with this season to season, but I feel like there's not, this episode to episode thing.
Yeah. No. I mean, there's the new Twilight Zone, but that's not really...
That's its own thing.
Right, like, this is a very different tone. It's like the mischievous kind of horror. I don't know how else.
Oh, Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes.
Oh, that's Robert Patrick.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. Robert Patrick, how he's styled is way over the top.
I like his 9 Inch Nails pin. I like to think that this is a crossover episode with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wow. Because he looks and acts just like Dr. Stockman. I would ignore that behavior. Screaming and banging the head. That house reminds me of the house in Lights Out.
Oh, yeah.
That sound effect of the door opening is in everything. And I love it.
I love this because we don't know. I mean, we know because it's Tales from the Crypt, but we don't know what's going on with Felicity and if there even is a Felicity or what's her deal. Like, the anticipation here to find out what's going on is great.
She is so clearly, like, this mother is obviously also damaged somehow. Her Felicity's father is Douglas MacArthur. Am I understanding that correctly?
And is that like World War II or
yeah?
Okay.
Brown lipstick. That needs to make a comeback. I don't even care.
Oh Lord.
That is clearly a completely normal child.
Oh boy. Somebody just ran by with a mask on and it was not okay.
The dress reminds me of Small Wonder.
Okay, something clearly is not okay down this hallway.
It's the gum. Why is she with?
I know. I love the Felicity or whoever it is POV. Ooh, you got a shock POV shot behind the mask because it's still not revealed what that woman saw or who the killer is.
Ew. Smart, but absolutely disgusting. Yeah. I love how everything's going all at once. Like it would be. I do like that they had to specify he had a specific fear of, like, electricity. Yeah. What?
Is that proven?
I think he's trying to use his book as a battering ram. This ceiling fan has, like, blades on it that are serrated.
Oh my god!
What a great idea for a security system.
Yeah.
Grinder ceiling fans.
Tied up with jump rope.
She kind of stumbled over her line a little bit, did you?
He's no Mr. Rogers.
No.
Oh Lord!
I know what you're thinking. Amazing, ain't she?
What?
It's love that keeps her going.
Absolutely unexpected that a 40-year-old corpse
Right.
would be the reveal. Oh, the professor.
Puts Robert Patrick back on. It feels like it's jumping off the page.
Yes.
Like it's straight out of the comic.
And how bizarre and how wonderful. I love it. Okay, that was really good.
I love that one.
And what season was that?
That was season 4. I can totally see how one would say that sort of epitomizes everything about Tales from the Crypt. I don't necessarily think for me, it's not like the best episode ever, but it really does kind of capture what the show even is.
Okay, so the name of this episode is what?
Death of Some Salesman.
And what season is it from?
This is season 5. I would consider seasons 4 and 5 probably like the peak.
And Ewan McGregor's in episode 2, right?
Yes, he is. I think it's even in this season. I don't know what episode, though. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Although, I just watched Moulin Rouge 2 days ago. Cried.
I love that movie. And I love that he's going to be doing an Obi-Wan movie.
Yes! I can't wait. And Dr. Sleep.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing that all of these worlds are colliding.
And this predates his, like, stardom by so long. I mean, I don't know what he really did. I don't know that much about him other than, like, Train Spotting. And Star Wars, of course.
Home Chopping Network.
This season was when the movie came out, right around this time. So this episode I saw... My friend John's mom had it on VHS, and we weren't, like, supposed to watch it. And I think this might have been the first... No, I had seen the show a little bit before. But I didn't know, because, like I said, we watched it on Fox, so I always saw, like, the edited for TV versions. And they had this on VHS straight from HBO. So this was the first unedited episode I saw, and traumatized. Not just because... Maybe this is the show that made me gay. Not because of this scene.
Yeah.
Although, like, whoa. HBO.
Yeah, if it's HBO, there's going to be boobs. I love how they're putting Tim Curry, like, as all the characters. Like, they list him separately.
Yeah. Yeah, he plays 3 roles, and one of them is the most repulsive things I've seen in my entire life, and I love it. I hope he gets his.
That's the thing I always remember about the comics is like, oh, the bad guys get theirs, you know? Well, usually.
In this show, that's the structure. It's always somebody out to rip somebody off, and then they get screwed over. It's like the first half of Psycho. Same structure.
Yeah.
You know, M. Night Shyamalan probably actually would do a pretty good job with this show because he's all about the twist.
Yeah.
And every episode could be the twist.
Yeah. Taking advantage of someone whose husband just died. This guy is the worst.
I know. Like, he's been established as being such a terrible person in the first, like, 5 minutes.
In multiple ways. What a jerk.
He just grifted her out of $250. This poor woman.
You know, it's like the telemarketing scams now that are targeting senior citizens. It's like they don't know. And then they give up their money. It's like, who are these people? They're the worst.
Well, I mean, she was happy for a brief moment.
Back when people had cash or carried cash.
Right. Can I Venmo it to you?
Yeah. He's going to go to the wrong house, isn't he? I mean, the right house. Oh, my goodness!
Tim Curry. The makeup is so unsettling.
Yeah.
He's the one that's hardest to recognize. It's funny, you can tell that it's Tim Curry more through the 2 female characters. At least me.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds so believable.
They have a nice VCR. They must be worth more.
This is probably my first introduction to Tim Curry as well.
Oh, yeah, I can't recognize him as the father. Oh, God. A head in the microwave. And another body in the closet?
Impaled on a vacuum cleaner. Like Cannibal Holocaust. Reminds me of Resident Evil 7. I like how they're all pretty fresh.
Why don't you come on over here where I can see you? You know that man.
I can hear your loneliness.
This is my show.
She's got a great smoky eye, though.
Yeah.
But the Mona Lisa has nothing.
Oh, she's got a hump.
Where is that?
Ew.
No.
Hasn't washed in a couple weeks.
Oh, God.
It's horrifying. God, Tim Curry, what the hell? For the record, I don't think this would happen. Gross.
Oh my goodness.
The eye contact. So anyway, this show made me gay. Horrifying on every possible level.
Yeah.
You really want to do this thing?
I love the camp.
Yes.
This can't possibly turn out well for him, but I don't know what's going to happen.
I like her sandals.
Yeah.
They're practical.
Be comfy on your wedding day.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering about, like, you know, he obviously was a bad guy, but he was the victim being a traveling salesman. I wonder what the statistics are about traveling salesmen who went missing because they went into the wrong house or area versus traveling salesmen who were like serial killers who like used that as a cover, you know?
Yes.
I mean, probably the statistics are very low on both of those things, but it just makes me think, like, you know.
Yeah, I remember traveling salesman. I think my mom got a vacuum when I was in like kindergarten from one.
Even just a few years ago, there was this truck that would come, and it was like a refrigerator truck, and they would come out to the country, and the guy would say, "Oh, I overbought meat for this restaurant this week, and like, can you buy these steaks because otherwise my boss is going to be mad." And it was like a scam, and like I saw about it, but he would come to my parents like, you know, a couple times a year saying, "Oh, I overbought," but you know, he's just selling steaks out of the back of his truck.
That's crazy. We had like the Schwan man, but that's legit.
Yeah, right. So I just think that's so fascinating. I don't think there can't be traveling salesmen anymore, are there?
I was wondering that same thing. I can't imagine it would be especially lucrative nowadays, but you never know, I suppose.
Yeah, you never know. Well, should we rank these episodes or should we just...
I'm just curious in your feelings. I think for me my favorite is the Santa Claus one. I love the Christmas. Just everything about it hits every chord.
Yeah, if I had to rank them, I'd rank them in the order we watched them. I think that Christmas one is definitely my favorite of those three. The David Warner Felicity episode, I love that twist. It was so weird and creepy. That was my number 2. And this one was number 3. All of them were great, though, of course. But I can't wait to watch more episodes, and we'll talk about more in a future episode. And we'll watch the new Creep Show and talk about that, too.
I'm really excited for Creep Show, and I love Tales from the Crypt, and I hope they do more. And there's also, like, anthology series horror is my favorite. I love Tales from the Dark Side, and Monsters is one that I had completely forgotten about and then heard about it when, like, online somewhere, and then I got the DVDs, and I was like, oh my god, I remember this intro, but I had completely wiped it from my brain. So watching that was really fun. I think the original Friday the 13th TV series kind of falls into that. Like, ugh.
I know. Yeah, we have to rewatch that sometime, too, and talk about that.
Yeah,
because
Roby.
Yeah, Roby. And wait, there's a music video. I know we've talked about this before, but she tried to have a music career, right?
Yes. I can't remember what the song was, but it was a cover, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that'll be fun. We're going to delve into that and maybe go down a rabbit hole of Roby. So, okay, until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Horror Rewinders! It's another edition of Meg's Spooky Book Corner. And this author does not really need my help selling his books, but I wanted to talk about the most recent Stephen King novel, The Institute. And I know I should really be uplifting indie authors, and I will hopefully be doing that very soon. But I think that it's probably safe to say a lot of you are Stephen King fans, and I just want to give my stamp of approval to the Institute. But again, I'm not going to give spoilers, just a few little plot points so that you can go out and get your copy. So something I really like about this book is that it centers around kids, and that's something that Stephen King has done in the past with it. And really, my favorite parts of it are the kid parts rather than the adult parts. But something that I've always kind of maybe didn't like about Stephen King's writing of kids is I always felt like they were a little too precocious. Often his kids can feel like adults, and that's something I found, just across his work. I don't know if any of you feel that way, but it's something that I've found. And so I feel like maybe I'm not the only one who's felt that way, because I feel like he really reins that in with the Institute. First of all, the main character, Luke, who's I believe about 12, he has an extremely high IQ. So high that he's actually going to be on his way to college, and he goes to a special gifted school. And so I think by sort of justifying that, it kind of helps sort of ground the character in a little bit more reality. And then the other kids that he meets at the Institute and our other main characters, they do not have as high of an IQ, and they feel like just really more authentic children than some of the Stephen King characters in the past. I really appreciated that. I felt like he worked to make them kids that we can relate to and that they felt age appropriate. I loved the characters in this book, and I think that that's the thing about Stephen King. For instance, the main adult character, and his name all of a sudden escapes me, but we meet him in the very first several chapters, and then we go to the Institute part of the book, and I missed that first main character. Even after just being introduced to him, I wanted to go back and find out what was happening with him. I knew that his story was going to entwine with Luke's at some point, but that's the thing with Stephen King, is he just makes you care about these characters right away. So the Institute is this place. It's sort of like the lab in Stranger Things. It kind of has that vibe a little bit, but instead of like 11 being sort of alone in there, there's a bunch of kids, and they're there because they do have similar sort of 11-like qualities to them. But I think the world that he sets up in the Institute, where most of the book takes place, is so cool. The rules are very interesting. The way their life is in the Institute. And I just really appreciated the world that he set up. That's another thing that Stephen King is a master at, is just world building. And he does it masterfully in this book. The Institute has the front half and the back half, and we sort of slowly learn what that means. And we come to meet all these great characters who we instantly care about. And Stephen King also does a really good job of having a diverse cast of characters, which I think at this point is so great, not only because we need that in novels and fiction, but also because at this point, everything Stephen King writes becomes a TV show or a movie. And so I like that he sort of already sets up like, these people need to be this race. And that is great because it just provides more diversity in the adaptation, which we know is going to happen. In fact, the rights to the Institute have already been sold to David E. Kelly. So I'm sure the show or the movie, but I'm guessing show, since it's David E. Kelly, will be here before we know it. So you've got to read it before then. So again, I'm not going to get into spoilers. I will say that I really enjoyed the ending of this book. You know, I got into a conversation a couple times recently. There's that whole idea that Stephen King doesn't know how to end a book, that he gets to that sort of final falling action and kind of falls flat on his face. I don't know if I believe that. I think it's become sort of like a rumor or a legend about him. I don't know if I feel that way. Ending a book is not easy, but I think that this particular ending really resonates. And I will say that I cried, which I don't think I've cried reading Stephen King in a while. So that was a really important, special moment. And I've been really liking his recent stuff. You know, I wouldn't say that his most recent writings are like the absolute pinnacle of his career, but at the same time, I think it's kind of fun to watch Stephen King age, just like we all are. And like his Mr. Mercedes trilogy was really like, you know, written by an older man, and sort of the character in there, Hodges, is an older man, and we're kind of seeing his trials and tribulations. And so I think Stephen King's just constantly learning and constantly becoming better, but also we're kind of seeing him change and have sort of different viewpoints. There are political viewpoints in the Institute, but they're certainly not overwhelming. I mean, they're subtle. But in the end, he wrote a novel that is definitely more sci-fi than horror. But don't worry, there's plenty of horror too. But at the end of the day, he did what he did best, which is create characters I cared about, created such a cool world, and just really drew me in. I read the book quite fast, even though it was one of, you know, his big thick ones. And so I really recommend that you try The Institute. It is a heartfelt book. It feels like he really put the time and effort into those characters, and it's going to make you care. It's going to make you sort of think about, yeah, maybe the Institute doesn't exist in real life, but it certainly has some parallels with some real world things too. So I recommend that you go out and buy the Institute and give it a try. Even if you haven't read a Stephen King in a while, I think you're really going to appreciate it. And just happy spooky reading out there, horror rewinders.